In this video, I'll be showing you the top 10 most daring robberies in history. Let's dive right in. Number 10. Halton Garden Safe Deposit Heist. What is most special about these robbers is that they defied the odds of agedness to partake in a robbery that saw them run away with about £10 million, even after some of the stolen items were recovered. But even beyond that, they were so courageous that they ensured their robbery spanned days and not hours of minutes, as robberies would normally span. In April 2015, an underground safe deposit facility in Hatton Garden, London, owned by Hatton Garden Safe Deposit Limited, was burgled. The burglars worked through the 4-day weekend of the Easter bank holiday, when many of the nearby businesses were closed. And while they were robbed for days, there was no externally visible sign of a forced entry to the premises. It was reported that the burglars had entered the premises through a lift shaft, then drilled through the 50-centimeter or 20-inch thick vault walls with a Hilti DD350 industrial power drill. On getting there, the police first announced that the facility had been burgled on the 7th of April, and reports based on CCTV footage state that the attack on the facility commenced on Thursday, the 2nd of April. The video showed people nicknamed by the newspaper as Mr. Ginger, Mr. Strong, Mr. Montana, the Gent, the Tall Man, and the Old Man. On the 22nd of April, the police released pictures of the inside of the vault, showing damage caused by the burglary, and how the burglars had used holes drilled through the vault's wall to bypass the M. According to official sources, the total items and cash stolen had an estimated value of up to £14 million, equivalent to £17 million in 2021, of which only £4.3 million, equivalent to £5.1 million in 2021, has been recovered. The heist was planned and carried out by 6 elderly men who were experienced thieves, all of whom were arrested, pleaded guilty, and received prison sentences in March 2016. 4 other men were also tried on suspicion of involvement. 3 were found guilty and sent to prison, while the 4th was cleared. Number 9. The Millennium Dome Raid. Remember, it's a list about the most daring robberies. And while some robberies were utter failures, the boldness that characterized them is why you have them on the list. One of such is the Millennium Dome Raid. Should it have been successful, it would have been the biggest of the biggest robberies in history. On the 7th of November 2003, a courageous local gang planned to ram raid the De Beers Diamond Exhibition, which was being held in the Riverside Dome at the time, and the gang had then planned to escape via the Thames in a speedboat. The De Beers Diamond Exhibition had a number of jewels on display, including the Millennium Star, a flawless 203.04 carat, 40.608 gram gem with an estimated worth of £200 million, equivalent to £358 million in 2021, and is considered one of the most perfect gems in the world. Also on display were priceless blue diamonds, but fortunately, the attempted robbery was foiled by the Flying Squad, led by John Shatford of the Metropolitan Police Service, as a result of information from Kent Police. Serious Crimes, who already had the gang members under surveillance for their suspected roles in a number of unsuccessful armored vehicle robberies. They were just never lucky. Perhaps robbery wasn't their thing. They always got close, but never got it. And even before the robbery was foiled, they had made several attempts to rob the dome, but had the tides seriously against them. This made the police replace all dome staff with armed undercover officers. Unsurprisingly, the operation to foil the robbery was the biggest operation undertaken in the Flying Squad's history, and at trial, the judge in the case commended the way it was carried out. If the heist had succeeded, then with a haul of £350 million worth of diamonds, equivalent to £627 million in 2021, it would have become one of the biggest robberies in history. Number 8. The Crown Jewel Robbery. Well, you could imagine the confidence of a rascal who chose to steal nothing other than the most sacred and dignified jewel in England, the crown jewel. But guess what? He got rewarded for his bravery. The year was 1671. Thomas Blood was an Anglo-Irish officer and a self-styled colonel who decided to try his hand at robbery. And you could guess his humble target again, the crown jewel of England, which are held in the Tower of London and surrounded by guards. A lot of guards. Blood's plan involved costumes, a fake title, a fake wife played by a prostitute, and a fake nephew which he claimed would marry the daughter of Talbot Edwards, the keeper of the jewels. After securing a private viewing, the gang knocked Talbot out, smashed the jewels with mallets, and stuffed them in their pants to make a run for it. They didn't get too far though, with several guards reportedly tackling them off their horses. Blood lucked out, however, as King Charles II was so amused by the attempt, he pardoned Thomas and let him retire on a nice spot of land in Ireland worth £500 a year. In contrast, Edwards' family was awarded less than £300 by the king, a sum which was never paid in full. And he returned to his duties at the Tower until his death in 1674. Sad for the just man, and lucky for the thief. Well, this happens sometimes. In all, it was a failed robbery attempt, but while he couldn't get away with the crown jewel, he grabbed a nice piece of land for himself. The next is an even more evil number, 7. And as you'd expect, the reward here is never a pleasant one. Number 7. The Dunbar Armored Robbery. Of course, you would expect that the most daring robberies involve a daring insider. Well, what was different about this was that the daring insider was the mastermind. In 1997, a group of 6 individuals masterminded the largest cash robbery in the history of the United States, until the Easter Sunday robbery that happened about a month ago. The leader of this operation was Alan Pace, who worked at the Dunbar Armored Trucking Company as a safety inspector. However, he took advantage of his position to plan and execute the heist. Sadly, the day before the robbery, he was fired by Dunbar for tampering with company vehicles. I hope the lesson is clear that you don't fire a fireman. Moving on, Pace carefully coordinated the timing of the security cameras at the Dunbar facility in Los Angeles, enabling him to avoid detection while he carried out the robbery. And having worked there for a while, Pace knew that on Friday nights, the vault was left open due to the large quantities of money being moved. While it is the belief of many that a friend in need is a friend indeed, to Pace, a friend in robbery is a friend indeed. He then enlisted the help of 5 of his childhood friends, and together, they broke into the facility, overpowered 2 guards who were on their lunch break. Also, the robbers managed to subdue all employees with duct tape before they could signal any alarms and did not fire a shot. In 30 minutes, the robbers had loaded $18.9 million, now equivalent to $35.9 million, into a waiting U-Haul truck. Pace knew exactly which bags contained the highest denominations and non-sequential bills. He also knew where the recording devices for the security cameras were located and took them. The group then returned to the house party. While the group left almost no evidence, Hill was implicated 2 years later when he accidentally gave a real estate broker a stack of banknotes that were still secured in their original currency straps. To their dismay, the broker contacted the police. Afterwards, Hill confessed, implicating the 5 other robbers and 3 other men who had assisted in laundering the money. While Pace was sentenced to 24 years in prison in 2001, Boyd was sentenced to 17 years, and the other 4 robbers received sentences ranging from 8 to 10 years. Also, 2 of the men who assisted in money laundering were sentenced to 2.5 years. Now we move on to an even more daring robbery. It was so mind-blowing, and trust me, in reality, it did blow many minds. Number 6. The Collar Bomb Bank Robbery. As like you'd suspect, this robber took the robbery to an even higher level, getting armed up with the master of all weapons, a bomb. On August 28, 2003, a middle-aged pizza delivery man, Brian Wells, walked into a bank, handed the teller a note, asking for the money in the vault. It surely wasn't pizza he was delivering this time, as he lifted his shirt to display a collar bomb around his neck and chest. It was more than pizza. It was money. After stealing the money, he got about 15 minutes away before state troopers arrested him. He started screaming that he had been forced to perform the robbery and the bomb was going to go off. The police surrounded the area and waited for the disposal squad to arrive. But before they could get there, the bomb started beeping and blew up. The FBI investigation into his death uncovered a complex plot described as one of the most complicated and bizarre crimes in the annals of the FBI. The investigation determined the plot was masterminded by Dale Armstrong to receive an inheritance by hiring Barnes with the money from the robbery to kill her father. Eventually, Dale Armstrong was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2011, while Wells' involvement in the plot remains a matter of controversy. Investigators concluded Wells was a willing participant in the robbery, but was told the bomb was fake. However, Wells's family said he was forced to rob the bank by the conspirators, and the tale only gets stranger from there. And with FBI investigators, a long paper trail of clues, and dead bodies hidden in freezers. And now we're halfway. But before we head into the top half, if you've enjoyed this video so far, I'd like you to hit the like button and hop into the comments section to reveal which has been your favorite robbery story so far. And on to the very best 5 on the list. Number 5. The Knightsbridge Security Deposit Robbery. Talk about a major robbery by a lone ranger and you have nothing else but this. Although this time, the help of an insider was needed. The robbery was led by Valerio Vice, a lawyer's son who arrived in London in 1986 from his native homeland, Italy, where he was wanted for 50 armed robberies. So London was the home of his 51st robbery. What an international criminal. Once in London, he quickly resumed his robbery career to fund his playboy lifestyle. On this occasion, he secured inside help, obtaining the help of the managing director of the center, Parvez Latif, a cocaine user who was heavily in debt. On the day of the robbery, 2 men entered the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Center and requested to rent a safe deposit box. After being shown into the vault, they drew handguns and subdued the manager and security guards. The thieves then hung a sign on the street-level door explaining that the safe deposit center was temporarily closed, whilst letting in further accomplices. They broke open many of the safe deposit boxes and left with a hoard estimated to be worth £60 million, equivalent to roughly $98 million at the 1987 exchange rate. 1 hour after the robbers departed, the shift changed and the new staff discovered the crime and alerted the police. Police forensic investigators recovered a bloody fingerprint that was traced to Valerio Vice. After a period of surveillance, several of his accomplices were arrested during a series of coordinated raids on the 12th of August, 1987, and later were convicted of the crime. Vice, however, fled to Latin America for some time. Later, when he returned to England to retrieve and ship his Ferrari Testarossa to Latin America, police arrested him. In 1990, Vice was finally arrested in London and sentenced to 22 years in prison. He was later extradited to Italy, where he served additional time for other crimes. He was incarcerated in an open jail in Pescara, and on 19th April 2000, during day release from prison, a gunfight broke out between Vice, an accomplice, and the police, resulting in Vice's death. The fourth one is not just daring, but it's ranked as one of the biggest robberies in history as well. Number 4. The Banko Central Burglary. Shockingly, these guys were more than armed robbers. They were skilled construction engineers as well. In August 2005, the Banco Central in Fortaleza, Brazil, was robbed by a group of men who drilled a tunnel into the bank's vault and made away with $71.6 million in cash and valuables. One would wonder why they didn't all pursue a career in civil engineering. Well, it turned out they had rented a property a few blocks away from the bank and posed as a landscape company, using that to cover up as the reason behind the sand seen in their company. After the robbery, they transported the money back through the tunnel and loaded it into a nearby van. When work resumed on Monday and the chaos caused was made public, the police launched an investigation after the 2005 Banco Central robbery in Fortaleza, Brazil. Several of the gang are thought to have been victims of kidnapping, and one member, Luis Fernando Ribeiro, thought to have been the mastermind of the operation, was killed by kidnappers after a ransom was paid. Arrests and recovery of the money, as well as kidnapping and murder of the perpetrators, kept going on. 129 arrests were made, and 32 million reais were recovered. Number 3. The Northern Bank Robbery. Christmas remains one of the most anticipated seasons of the year for the good tidings it brings. But for these 2 bank executives, it was a Christmas to remember for all the wrong reasons. It brought them fame, but at what cost? At robbery cost then. On the Sunday before Christmas in 2004, a group of masked robbers arrived at the homes of 2 bank managers in Belfast, Northern Ireland. The executives, Chris Ward and Kevin McMullen, both worked at the headquarters of Northern Bank in Belfast. The robbers, dressed as police officers, entered their homes and took the families of both men hostage and threatened to kill them if Ward and McMullen didn't help the robbers steal from the bank. Wow, it turned out they were 2 in 1. They were robbing kidnappers, or perhaps kidnapping robbers. Or can you think of some other name on my behalf? Let's see that in the comment section. Moving on, the managers were instructed to go to work the following day, where they would be met by the robbers. The next day, Ward and McMullen arrived at work as though nothing had happened, per the kidnappers' demands. One bank director, Christopher Ward, complied with a scheduled test run and delivered a duffel bag holding $1 million to a gang member staged at a nearby bus stop. That evening, after the bank closed, Ward and McMullen opened the vault for the kidnappers. At the close of the business, the thieves arrived at the building and were let inside by the bank directors. The robbers made their way to the cash storage area, where an unusually large sum of cash was staged to fill ATMs for the impending holiday shopping season. The group left shortly before midnight and made off with an estimated 26.5 million British pounds, about 42.5 million US dollars at the time, before calling for the strategic release of the hostage families. Surely, it was the biggest bank robbery in Irish history. The following day, once the robbery was exposed, the bank alerted the authorities of the theft and announced that it would be recalling the majority of its banknotes and reissuing newly colored and updated versions that would slowly replace the stolen notes from circulation. Allegations swirled around the individuals involved, insinuating that the theft was perpetrated by bank and local officials on political motivations. One of the prime actors, Ward, was accused of orchestrating the robbery and later acquitted. A small amount of cash related to the robbery was retrieved from a nearby country club, and a local financial advisor was charged with laundering approximately $5 million of the missing funds. Seemingly without evidence, police officers blamed the robbery on the IRA, the Irish paramilitary organization that opposes British rule. These accusations put a strain on the ongoing Northern Ireland peace process within the United Kingdom. However, in the 20 years since the robbery, only one person has been arrested for money laundering. You probably thought that was daring, but try thinking about the most daring, weaponless robbery of all time. One worth its rank as the second on the list, and you have this. Number 2. Great Train Robbery. What do you expect of a robbery so great it was named Great Train Robbery? Greatness, of course. It was truly as great as the 12-carriage train in which it happened. But all it took to take away the greatness was the Monopoly board. So sad. I mean, sad for the thieves and glad for the justice. Well, let's see how it happened. In the early hours of August 8, 1963, the Royal Mail train traveling from Glasgow to London was ambushed in Buckinghamshire, England. After tampering with the line-side signals to bring the train to a halt, a gang of 15, led by Bruce Reynolds, attacked the train. With careful planning based on inside information from an individual known as the Ulsterman, whose real identity has never been established, the robbers escaped with over £2.61 million, which is equivalent to over $58 million today. That's huge, isn't it? Pitifully, the bulk of the stolen money has never been recovered. And to the greatest surprise of many, the gang did not use any firearms. Though Jack Mills, the train driver, was beaten over the head with a metal bar and suffered serious head injuries. After his partial recovery, Mills returned to work doing light duties. He retired in 1967 and died in 1970 due to an unrelated illness. Mills never overcame the trauma of the robbery. Following their feat of successfully executing one of the biggest robberies in history, the gang hid at Leather Slade Farm. Sadly for them, the police found this hideout and incriminating evidence. A Monopoly board with fingerprints led to the eventual arrest and conviction of most of the gang. The ringleaders were sentenced to 30 years in prison. Despite most of the gang being captured and convicted, the audacity and scale of the heist left a lasting legacy in British criminal history. And when it comes to the most daring and most strategic of all, the largest non-monetary heist in history, the very heist of the century, you have it here. Number 1. Antwerp Diamond Heist. Well, they aren't number 1 for no reason. These 5 robbers didn't only have the guts to force themselves into bypassing 10 layers of security, but their boldness saw them force their name into history books by engaging in a robbery that's been dubbed as the heist of the century. If what you heard was 10 layers of security, trust me, you did hear well. It was 10 good layers. It happened on the tragic weekend of the 15th and 16th of February 2003 in Antwerp, Belgium. The robbery had been planned for 18 months with a level of planning and sophistication that was almost unprecedented. Leonardo Notarbartolo, the orchestrator of the robbery, lived beside the Diamond Center for 3 years prior to the crime. And as part of his sophisticated ruse, Leonardo posed as an Italian diamond merchant in order to gain credibility at the center. The day before the robbery, Notarbartolo visited the vault, posing as a routine visit. While inside, he quickly sprayed women's hairspray on the thermal motion sensors, as the oil from the product was transparent but would temporarily insulate the sensor from thermal fluctuations in the room, while the sensor would only be triggered if it detected both heat and motion. These guys were everything. Robbers, physicists, just name it all. This would last many hours, but not permanently, as the group used it as a temporary measure until they could properly disable the sensor system. While the security camera recorded his actions, the guard was accustomed to his visits and did not pay attention. And during the robbery, Notarbartolo remained in a nearby getaway vehicle during the robbery, listening to a police scanner and prepared to leave when the group was done. The team wore plastic gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints. The vault that housed the diamonds was situated 2 floors below the main floor and was protected by multiple security mechanisms, including a lock with 100 million possible combinations, infrared heat detectors, a seismic sensor, Doppler radar, and a magnetic field. And the building itself had a private security force, yet they bypassed them all. The team was made of super intelligent members with interesting nicknames like King of Keys, the Monster, Speedy, the Genius. They cleverly found their way around the vault and the Diamond Center, having duplicated the key earlier. Interestingly, the men had so mastered the layout of the vault that they did most of their theft in darkness to further leave them unnoticed. And after many hours of robbery, they finished and left about 5:30 a.m., putting the bags in Notarbartolo's car while they headed to his apartment on foot. The estimated worth of the missing items was more than $100 million. The heist remained undetected until the vault was opened on a Monday morning, making it a mastermind of criminal planning. More than 123 out of 160 safe deposit boxes were forced open, each of which was made of steel and had a unique key or combination lock. The group was caught after Notarbartolo and Speedy went to dispose of the evidence of their plans, planning to burn it in France. Speedy was overcome with panic at the prospect of transporting such incriminating evidence and insisted they dispose of it in a nearby forest. However, Speedy suffered a panic attack and disposed of the evidence poorly, hurling it into the bushes and mud rather than burning it. Notarbartolo was busy burning his own evidence, and when he discovered what Speedy had done, he decided it would take too long to gather everything up and they needed to leave, confident that nobody would find their rubbish. A local hunter owned the land and called the police when he found the rubbish the next day, believing it to be caused by local teenagers he had previously had disputes with. When he mentioned that some of the rubbish consisted of envelopes from the Antwerp Diamond Center, the police immediately investigated. The evidence from the rubbish was enough to allow the police to gain a lead, and they were eventually able to identify Notarbartolo from security footage from a nearby grocery store where he had purchased a sandwich. A receipt for the sandwich was amongst the rubbish. Leonardo Notarbartolo was arrested and sentenced to prison for 10 years, while his crew members got 5 years. Sadly, most of the stolen items remain unrecoverable till date. Years later, he gave an interview to Wired magazine in which he claims the whole thing was an insurance fraud attempt by a diamond merchant who hired him. And that's it. The most daring robberies in history. The prominence of boldness over results. I'm sure you enjoyed watching this video, and it's time to dare you to make the greatest of all moves by liking this video and subscribing to this YouTube channel for quality crime contents like this. Until next time, peace out.